Welcome back to Insights at DDLynn Designs, a unique twist in the ancient art of wire. This is DDLynn, and I'm excited today to show you how to make this bracelet. It's actually pretty easy. It's just a 2-wire bracelet weave, and we'll be using 2 pieces of 16 gauge round wire. Because it's a 2-wire bracelet, we want it to hold up, and it's adjustable. So you can actually squeeze it in because we're using round wire and a very heavy gauge weaving wire. I'll be using 24 gauge weaving wire on this, and we'll be adding a bead. So the first thing that you want to do is you want to make sure that you have a bead that has a hole in it. And so you want to make sure that your wire, not this wire, sorry, that your weaving wire is going to go through that hole. Okay, so my bead, if I can find my calipers, I don't know what happened to my electronic one. It's around here somewhere. My bead on this one, and this is onyx, is 20 millimeters. So it's 20 millimeters. It's a little less than an inch in circumference. So that just gives me an idea. And before we get started, if you're new to my channel, please subscribe. Don't forget to hit the bell so you know when my tutorials are coming out next. And you can follow all my new designs at DDLynnDesigns.com. You can purchase my beautiful artwork at DDLynnDesigns.com, or Facebook, DDLynn Designs, or Instagram, DDLynn Designs. So let's get started. So as I mentioned, I cut myself 2 pieces of 9 inches each of 16 gauge round wire. And what I did is I marked the center, and then I put my stone in just to give me an idea of where I'm going to stop my weave. This is basically a gauge. So I'm just kind of giving myself a gauge of where I want to weave from. I measured back from the wire 1 inch. So I'm going to start my weaving there, and I'm going to get my 24 gauge weaving wire, and I'm going to be working off the spool. So here's my big old spool. So I'm going to give myself a little lead. Now, when you're working with a thicker weaving wire, this 24 gauge, you won't be able to slide your wire through very, very quickly, and it's really going to beat on your hands a little bit, so I might be putting a glove on. So I'm just looking at where these wires are marked, and I'm going to start my weaving pattern. So I'm going to leave myself a little bit of a tail just in case I need it later, and I'm going to go ahead and come under, and you can make any weave pattern you want. And I'm going to do 3 full rotations. And if you notice, I'm pushing my wire a lot. And we're going to be spreading out these ends here in a little bit. So I'm going to come back underneath, and I'm coming around the top. And I'm going to do 3 full rotations again. So that's what we're going to be doing. We're just going to keep doing this pattern, and then we're going to be spreading our wires out. And I'm going to do it all the way up to this line. So I won't be doing all of that just to bore you. So there's my third, but you want to make sure that it's 3 full, or again, any weaving pattern that you want. And then because, again, that we're using a thicker gauged weaving wire, you want to really watch your wires. I'm going to start spreading these out now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get some tape. Where are all my tapes? I had them here earlier. I may not be getting any tape. I don't know what happened to my other tape, but I'll be using this one. And I'm going to tape my ends. I'm going to line my wires up. Just want to tape them. Now, round wire has a wonderful tendency of rolling on you. So I'm going to start spreading these out a little bit. And so I'll do a couple more patterns, and then I'm going to weave up to this mark on my wire. Let's get that little guy out of the way. My wires are long, so I'm kind of hitting my camera stand. So because, again, that we're working with a thicker gauged wire, you want to make sure that you cinch up like every couple rotations. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and weave up to this mark. So I'm going to weave up to this mark here, and then I'll be right back. So I wanted to pop back in really quick just to let you know that you need to flatten down your wires because this is a heavier gauge. It's going to have a tendency to bow a little bit. So you want to make sure that you just press that wire down nicely. I'm not pressing super hard, but I'm just flattening it out. So just wanted to share that with you, and then I'll continue weaving up. So I've weaved up to my mark, and so now I'm going to start to do some measuring. Remember, this is just a guide, these marks here. And remember, we're going to be losing a little over an inch here because we're going to be taking those and hammering them and making little swirls or loops. That's going to be our cuff. So a couple of things. When you're measuring, you've got to take that into consideration. So far I've weaved 2.5 inches. So I'm going to lose an inch here because I'm going to be swirling those off, right? So I want my cuff to be about 6 max because I want to be able to have the gap space. Some people like really tight cuffs. I don't want a lot of opening and closing. If you get too close, and it's a personal preference, if you get too close to the center, meaning bringing your cuff ends really close, they're going to be opening it a lot more, where if you have this gap space, then you're just slipping it on your wrist, and then you're just tightening it up here, where you're not putting a lot of pressure or hardening the wire. So you're just pushing in on the sides. So that's really important to take into consideration when you're making this piece. But again, it's personal preference. So knowing that I have 2.5 inches, and then I'm going to lose length when I wrap my stone because I'm going to start weaving that in, then I'm going to come up just a little bit more. So here's some tips on your weaving. And I'm, again, working off the spool. I'm going to be cutting my wire. You want to make sure, again, that you cinch back your wires and make sure that this wire that's crossing over here doesn't cross over your coils, because you're working on an angle as you're cinching that wire down. So I tend to turn mine over a lot and just press down on that wire and make sure that this wire that's crossing over the two wires is really snug down in right next to each coil. So I'm just pressing right in where that wire is crossing over, and I'm just flattening into the coils. So I'm going to show you what I mean here. So as I'm coming around, I'm going to make my 3 coils. My wires are really long, so I'm trying to stay in frame here. And if you notice, I always put my finger on the back to flatten that wire out. I'm actually pushing it in. So here's what you want to watch. You don't want this, because it's going to have a tendency to do that the way you're pulling on your wire. So you can always straighten that wire out just by pulling on it and guide it down, and then create your angle. And then I'm always pushing, not heavily in the middle of the wire, just flattening it out. So I'm creating some memory for it. And because you're working with 24 gauge, it's going to respond to all the pressure that you put on it. So here's what I mean. You want to push down there, then turn your work over and push down there, and then just cinch it up. So what do we got here? We've got 2.5 inches, a little over 2.5 inches. So notice how I straighten my wire there, then I'm coming around. Always turn your work around in your best working position so you're not fighting the wire. So I'm just flipping it over as I'm keeping tension on that wire. Okay. Now, if you find that, for example, none of mine are really that way, but if you find a wire that's kind of lost its shape or got bent out, you can always come in and just very gently flatten out and straighten out that wire. Now I'm going to be cutting this wire here in a moment. So I've got this here, that's going to give me 2 3/4 of an inch. Then this is going to be wrapped around there. That's going to take up another whole inch or so, so that's 4. So that's good. I'm good there. So now what I'm going to start doing is I'm going to set my stone. And I need to open these up. So very gently, I'm going to create a curve. And then I'm going to put my stone in here to see how I'm going to be wrapping it around. And then I'm going to have to set it in there. So I'm going to curve these out even more. And then I'm going to cut my wire, and I'm going to cut myself 3 feet. Might be too much, might not be enough, because I need to bring in other wire for the other side. And I got myself a little tangled mess. So I'm going to cut that and be right back. So I've cut my wire, I've got my 3 feet here, and now I'm going to start coiling to this mid mark, but I'm going to keep watching how I'm gauging because I've got to wrap it around until I can get, so what I'm going to do is create coils up here until I can get my wire through this hole. So I'm going to work off the spool on the other side, and I'm going to bring in more wire because we're not going to be crossing over these wires. And it's going to want to slide on you. Until you run your wire through the bead. So how many did I do here? 11, I think. I'm definitely going to need more. Let's see. I'm going to stop there for a minute, and I'm going to do 11 on this side. So that's already got 3. If you notice, I'm constantly turning my piece. I'm giving myself the best working advantage so I'm not fighting the wire. And you're going to have to determine how many coils you're going to need to get your wires through your bead. I'm just cinching that wire in. Got to be careful not to tangle this. Sorry about that, you guys. Tangle this wire over that. Okay, so now I'm going to put my bead in. I'm looking at where my hole is, so I'm definitely going to have to do some more coils. And I'm going to open this up even more. So I'm going to really pull that wire out because I'll be swinging it around the stone. So it looks like about 4 more. So I'm going to do 3 first, then I'm going to shape it around the stone, and then I'll know. Ooh, we got wires going everywhere. Look at that. Isn't that fun? Oh my goodness gracious. So let's see. I'm going to do one more here. Now I'm going to shape this around my stone. So I'm going to hold this flat here. And I'm holding the bracelet band and the bead firmly. And I'm going to swing this. I'm going to come out. You can't see where my hand is because the wire is so long. So I'm going to swing this around the stone. And swing this around the stone. To see when I can start feeding my wire through. So let me see where that's lining up. It looks like I need to do a couple more coils. So I'm just looking, just to give you a view, I'm looking at where my wire's coming through. So I've got my wire coiling around there, and I need to think I come up another couple. So I'm going to look over here. That one looks pretty good. So let's see. So now I need to cut my wire. I was working off the spool where I added this wire in. So I'm going to match it up to the length of the wire that I cut. And I'm simply loosening up my spool so that they're the same length. And then I'm going to cut it. Sorry, you guys, I got so much length going on here. So that's my front. So I'm going to feed this through and see how it's lining up. So we got a lot of wire here. And I'm going to feed the other one through too. And if it's not lining up right, but I'm just going to do this one side first. Just pulling my wire through. Let's see. So I need to do another coil. So I'm going to pull my bead out. All right. This one looks... And I really wanted that wire in the opposite direction. I wanted them both to be coming out from the back. So I'm wondering if I can swing that out and turn it around. It's not going to make a huge difference, but I'll have one feeding under and one feeding through. So I'm just wondering if this is too tight. Yeah, I can't swing it off. I'm thinking out loud, you guys. So I wanted both my wires to be coming out in the same direction, and one's coming under and one's coming over. So I'm going to feed. These wires are so long that when I pull on them, they slide my whole piece out of the way. So I'm going to feed my wires through. I'm going to slowly pull a little bit of each side. Because they're so long, just going to pull a little bit at a time. And I'm not sure, got too many things in the way, how this is going to work out with one coming under and one coming over. We're going to see here in a minute. So I need that wire to go over. So what I decided to do before I feed my wires through my beads, since they're going in the opposite direction, meaning one coming under and one going over, I'm going to go ahead and straighten my arms of this of these wires. I'm at a loss for words. So I want to make sure that it's centered up. So I'm just turning this on my mat. And then I'm going to mark my wire. I got so much wire going on here. Want to make sure it's nice and center. So I'm going to mark here and mark here. Move these wires out of the way, and I'm going to use my thumb because I don't want a super sharp bend yet, and I'm going to hold at the tip of this wire and swing it out. And then the same thing over here. If you make a really sharp bend at first and you need to adjust it because it's off center, it makes it harder to make that correction if you have a really sharp bend. So that looks pretty centered to me. So now, put my bead back in, and I can see now by doing that, by straightening the arms, that I'm going to need another coil here. And I'm still concerned about this wire. I'm wondering if I can slide it out. I can. Let's see if I can take it all the way out. I may just recoil this, y'all, so you can see what I do when I need to make corrections. So I might just recoil this if I can't slide it out and turn it in the opposite direction, because I want my wires to be coming out the same way. So I'm sliding that off. Now I'm going to see if I can pull this off. Nope, that's not going to work because it's going to be in the wrong direction. So I'm going to recoil that. Just cut that off. Probably going to run out of wire, so we'll be adding wire in. So I want my wire to be coming over the top like this one. So this wire is coming underneath and over. So this one needs to be coming over. So I'm going to bring the wire underneath in case you did what I did, and I'm going to create my coils. Because it just wasn't going to work in the opposite direction. And I didn't catch that when I was first adding wire. I'm going to crimp that down really tight. Get this big guy out of the way. Now it's going to all work. Now what I'm doing here is I'm spinning my wires. So I'm using my plier and I'm going in the direction that the wire is going to really tighten it around that frame. Because I'm adding in wire, I don't want this to shift a lot on me. And I'm going to get in a better working position. I want to come by spinning it. Let's see, did I go up too high? Hopefully not. I'm just pushing that wire down. I'm going to bring this one around. And now I'm going to see how my bead is setting up. So now I'm going to bring my wires through the bead. Gotta find my end. There's a lot of wire going on here. And I'm going to pull a little bit of each side at a time. You don't want to kink this up. So you can't see me pulling because my wire is way, way, way over here. But I'm just holding on to my bead and pulling a little bit through at each time until I can get close to my frame. And if you notice, this is really important. You want to keep a loop. So you don't want this wire to have a sharp edge or flattened. You want to keep it looped. So a little bit. And then we'll see how it's lining up. and then I'm going to pull through. So this wire needs to come, these need to come under, I need to cross them over. So this one was coming on the inside, I need to cross it over. And this one was coming on the inside, meaning on the inside of these loops. You want this wire to go on the outside. So I may have to come up underneath it. Nope, I don't. So I'm good there. So I'm going to hold this wire down in the back, and I'm going to bring this, crossed it over. So it's inside the stone, obviously. And so I lifted up on it so it crossed over this wire. And then I'm going to pull as I'm holding it down over here as well. I'm pushing down, and I'm pushing really hard. And I'm going to create a couple of coils. Then I'm going to come around to this side, make sure that this wire is on the outside of these coils. Let's see how it's setting up over there. Perfect. Okay, so now I'm going to cinch them down. It's going to move. That's natural because it's going to spin inside of there. So we're going to continue coiling up until we're getting ready to add a bead. And I thought about adding, but I might use a bigger bead, this beautiful little tiger's eye. So I'm going to continue coiling up towards the neck, and I'll come back in so you know where I'm going to add the bead. So you want to coil up each side. So I wanted to pop back in just to give you a little tip when you're coiling. You want to make sure that you really cinch down. I'm holding my piece very firmly, and I'm really pushing those coils back. So every so many rotations, you want to really cinch back on those coils. So I'm going to get a bead. I've decided I'm not going to use that little tiny one. And I decided that I wanted some contrast with this onyx. So I'm going to use an Amazonite bead, I think. And I'm holding the legs very firmly as I'm cinching. I'm wiggling my pliers and cinching that back. And I know I need to come up a little bit more, but I want to get my bead. So let me grab the bead and see if that's what I want. I've got a couple of different colors here because Amazonite is brown, sea green, light blue, and this looks like a 6mm bead, and that's going to work perfect. So I need, see how pretty that contrast is? I need to come up a little bit more because my hole is up around that neck. So I'm going to come up a little bit more until I reach the hole, and I'll be right back. Okay, so one of the things you want to make sure of is that the bead that you use, so this is an Amazonite gemstone, that the hole is big enough to accommodate both of your 24 gauge wires, which I know this is. If it's not, then at this point you would need to add in a smaller gauge wire. So if you have to step down to 26, then you would just take your bead and you'd run your wires through and you'd wrap it. So you'd want to wrap, meaning run your wires through your bead and then wrap around your legs here. And then you'll need to cut this and then start your weaving process again. So that's kind of important. So I'm going to just start feeding these wires through like before. And I'm going to do a little bit at a time of each. So I'm holding the bead and sliding the wire through on each side until I get down to a loop. And I'm keeping that loop there. So you can always put your hand there or your fingers there to keep the loop going because you don't want any bent edges. And if you have to accommodate your bead size, you can always open up. Just want to see because this is my front. So I'm just opening this up a little bit. Make sure that your wires are coming on the outside. And I got my pliers stuck in there. So you want that on the outside of that loop. And this one on the outside. And that's plenty of gap there. So I'm holding the bead very firmly and pushing it through in between these two wires. And then I'm going to really pull. And I'm going to turn it around. I can see here that I need to kind of snug that one in a little bit. Because this is my front. I marked my wires down here so with a marking pen so that I knew where my front was. So I'm going to open these up a little bit more so that I can start coiling again until I'm past the bead. I want to cross that over. And I think I went, whoa, my wire is stuck on something way over here. I went in the opposite direction that I wanted to go. I wanted to come underneath. There we go. That's so much better. That's why it was catching up a little bit. So I want to open that up a little bit more so I have some working room around this bead. I want my wires to be coming in the same direction. That one, because I already put memory in the wire, kind of bowed up a little bit. So here's what you should have. I'm going to swing that around to the back. I'll be clipping that off shortly. So you want your wires to be nice and clean. Now you can go wider here. Where is the bracelet? Or you can go thinner. So on this one, I made it obviously closer together. This one I'm doing wider. Just wanted a little bit more dramatic look. Or you can go thinner. So at this point, I can start bringing in my wires, or I can leave them spread out. So I'm going to bring them in just a little bit, and I'm simply going to do that by keep straightening them. And as I'm straightening them, I'm pulling them towards the middle. You want them nice and even, so you always want to line up on your mat. I could actually add another bead here, which would be really pretty. Do I want to do that? Should we do that, you guys? Should we add another bead? I think that would be really, really pretty. Just to continue to add beads. Look how pretty that would be. Let's do it. So I'm going to open this back up just a little bit and see where my hole is and where it's lining up. So I need to come up another probably 2 or 3 coils on each side. So let's do that. That looks really, really pretty. I just see things as I go. So I'm going to do 5 coils on each side. And again, this is all depending on the size of your bead. So let's see how this would line up there. That looks good. So I'm going to cinch these down. And then let me put this through here again to see where my hole is. All right, I got to open this up because I need more room for that bead. And I'm just seeing how my wire is going to come through. So I need to do another coil because that bead looked like it was going to be riding up against the other one. So let's open those up. And it looks like I'm going to need to do another couple, I think. But I'm going to do one at a time. So what I'm doing is I'm holding my bead in between the space that I want to connect it. And I'm finding the hole in the bead and seeing how it's lining up. And it looks like one more. So my first thought was 2 coils. So it has everything to do with the size of your bead. So now, as before, I'm just going to feed this bead through. And you guys know how to do it, so I'll be right back. Okay, so I got my second bead in. This is going to be really pretty with these additional beads. And I'm going to coil up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And that may or may not be enough coils. And I'm just cinching down. This is my back. I need different pliers. Okay, that's my front. Boy, that's going to be so cool. Should we add one more? I think so. I keep saying I think so. I'm looking around in my bead box for a little bit of a darker one. Don't like that one. That'll work. So I'm looking at this again. I need to straighten my wires out a little bit so I can see if I need to make some coils. So as before, I'm just going to start pulling on the wires as I pull them in. And I'm kind of pulling on an angle because I want to wrap around this bead here. So now I'm going to push my wires where my weaving is, and you can use your pliers if you want. And I'm going to push them around that bead. And I'm pretty sure I'm going to need some more coils. Yep. So I'm going to open my legs up. And it's just changing the shape. So I'm going to squeeze this in even more. And then I'm going to open them up again. So let's see where this guy is sitting in there. So I'm going to need about 2 more on each side. Whoops, did I do the same side? I think I did. I think I did. Boy, these wires are just catching up on everything. I have to have everything out of the way or it keeps catching up on them. So these are coming out the back. So I'm going to round the sides out a little bit, and what I mean by that is I'm going to put, sorry you guys, I have to keep going out of camera to get my wires out of my way, is I'm just going to curve them in a little bit because I don't want a lot of gap space in between that bead. Let's see, am I going to need more? I think so. Let me come around back and see where it's lining up, since I'll be working on the back. That's good. So as before, I'm going to untangle these. I'm going to run my bead through both these wires. I'll be right back. So I wrapped my third bead in, and so I'm going to start my coiling. You're going to have to spread your wires apart a little away from the bead so that you can get your coils in. So I'm doing 5. So let's see what we got going here. I need to slide that down. There we go. So I think I'm going to change the pattern of this up. Straighten that out a little bit. So I think what I want to do, because I'm always changing as I go, I'm going to straighten that out a little bit so I can snuggle that down. I'm going to straighten my wires up, and I want to change the shape. So I'm going to kind of grab the tip and round these out a little bit. And make sure I'm centered up. Let me come down here so you can see what I'm doing. And then I'm going to mark my wire. This bead is bigger than that one. They're never symmetrical, I swear. So I'm going to mark my wire. And then as before, I'm going to use my thumb because I don't want a sharp edge on this. So I'm going to hold at that mark and grab the tip of my wire and swing it out. Hold at this mark, grab the tip of my wire and swing it out. And then I'm going to center them up. And I don't know if I want to add another bead. I don't think so. Kind of like it in threes. Although I could. Let me see what that would look like. I could add an onyx at this point to really change it up. Want my gap space even. I don't know, I wish this was live. You guys could tell me what you think, but I'm going to pass. I am not going to do that. So I'm going to start a 2-wire weave pattern. Actually, do I want to do that? Yeah, I'm going to do one more coil. I was thinking about changing the pattern up. And crisscrossing over, and I think I'll do that. So I'm going to come underneath on this one, and I'm going to come over and then under. So we're making a crisscross pattern. Then I'm going to coil. Do I want to do 3 coils or 2 coils? I'm going to do 3. And then that will be 1, 2, and 3. So they're both coming over the top, so I'm going to bring this one under. It's kind of like a 2-wire figure 8. I'm going to bring this one over and then under. It's going to be a very organic, eclectic bracelet. So 3 coils. Okay, so I'm going to be spreading these legs out again. So I'm going to do, you really want to push those in as you're drawing them through. Wires, wires. Wires everywhere. So here's what I mean. As you're feeding your wire through, you want to push that wire down flush, because I'm coming over the top. And now I'm coming in between and underneath. So you want to push them down. Just notice something there. That's going to be cool. Okay, so now I was thinking about adding a little bead there, like a black onyx one, but that's a very small space. I could open it up or wait until I get down here. I'm just going as I go, folks. So I'm going to cross over again. So this is what I mean. This space right here, I'm thinking about adding an onyx bead. Let me look at my beads and I'll be right back. So I've got this little black onyx bead and it measures, it's going to fit perfect in that space. But I haven't completely decided if I want to do it. I'm just checking it out. So this looks about 4 millimeters. Just depends on the space that you have there. So I'm going to open this up a little more and continue my 2-wire figure 8. Now I want to see what this will look like. What do you guys think? I wish this was live. You could tell me. Or do I want a bigger one? Let me look. So that's a 6 millimeter versus the 4 millimeter, and I think I'm going to use that one. So I'm going to need a couple more coils to see how my stone is going to be parallel to the wires running through it. So as before, I'm always going to find the hole. Need one more coil. And I'm going to feed my bead through and see how it's lining up there. I just realized I may not be able to get both wires through here. So here's that perfect example that this hole may not be big enough. I'm going to see, I've got a bead reamer, but I don't have time to do that. I'm going to see if the holes are bigger with the other one. So because I really want to use this bead and the holes are too small to put two 24 gauge wires through it, I'm using a bead reamer and I'm just moving it back and forth inside that bead to open it up and make a bigger hole. And you do the same thing on each side. Always better to do this with water, but I only need a little bit of space. A friend of mine has a drill press, so he can do this in like 2 seconds. So I can feel that this side is tighter, and also where the tip of the diamond bit is coming out. So I'm going to try to see if I can get both these wires through there again. So let's see. Boy, plays tricks on your eyes. Because I really want that in there now. Now that I made up my mind. It's still a little tight in the middle. So let me keep working on that. If that doesn't work out, then I will skip that part. So I was determined, and I just worked on it for a while and finally was able to make the hole big enough to bring both my 24 gauge weaving wires through. Want to keep a nice loop down here as before. Pull a little bit of each side through. There we go. What do you guys think of that? It's going to be a really eclectic looking bracelet. So I'm going to pull that through pretty tight. Let's get this guy out of the way. This is my front. I think we're going to trim this wire off back here. Make sure I don't cut my weaving wire. That would be a bummer. Haven't done that in a very long time, but it happens. So what kind of shape do I want to go on here? So let's see, that's still too close. So now I'm going to round up. Let's make sure we've got center going on. And we don't. And then I'm going to continue weaving until I get, let's see, we've got 2 3/4 inches there. And we've got not even 2 yet. So I'm going to be weaving up about another 2 inches. And I will stop when I get here. Okay, so we're getting to the end where we're going to curl off. So I'm centering up my stone. I've got 2 3/4 of weaving from this end. And I want to make sure that I have the same amount here. So I'm center, that's 1, 2, I'm going to go a couple more wraps. And that 3 feet of wire worked out great. This one was shorter because if you remember when I was down here, I took it off and I had to cut it. So I lost about 12 coils. But it worked out great. So I am going to do a couple of more rotations here of this 2-wire figure 8 weave. And then I'm going to show you a cool technique. So on this 2-wire weave, it's like we're making a bale. You want to crimp down and roll your wires in where the wire is going across. I'm pushing it down. I'm creating more dimension, and I'll show you here in a minute. You can see as I'm pushing this down that the wires are going in. I'm doing it right at the edge. So this is a cool technique. It's also going to harden that wire more. So it's pushing it down in. Then I'm going to get a tool. It can be anything. This is the one I'm going to use. It's a little dental tool. And I'm just going to, where's my front? This is my front. So I'm just going to push those down in the middle. Because when I wrap this around my jar to create the bracelet, it's going to pop it out more. So we just created a really cool look. You know, that's all we did. So I'm going to finish off with this one wire because this one's getting very short. I'm trying to think. No, that'll work. So I'm going to finish this off. And now I'm going to measure my bracelet. This is going to be a big bracelet. So I'm going to stop here because that's 6 inches from weave to weave. Yeah, 6 inches, just a little over 6 inches. So I'm going to stop there, and then I'm going to take my tape off. I'm going to open the legs up. Actually, let me measure them first. So that's just, I want them about 1 inch from the weave. So make sure these are snug down. Oops, bent it. That's okay. Don't jackknife your wire like I just did, but that's going to go around my little jar anyways. I prefer using a jar than a ring mandrel. And I'm going to use my super flush cutters. I'm going to cut these at the 1 inch mark because this is a thick gauged wire. And I'm going to cut these at the 1 inch mark. Let's see if those are lining up. That one's a little bit long. Okay, I need to get rid of that. Want that good and tight in there. So those should be equal in leg. I'm going to open these up. So that worked out good, that 3 feet of wire. Remember when I cut off here because I had to bring in the coils? So I cut off the wire. I left 3 feet on one side and then I added in another 3 feet of wire. Just a little reminder there. So let's see, do those look even in length? These look a wee bit longer. Okay, so now I'm going to make my little loops. So I am going to make points on my end. Boy, this is a long one, huh, guys? So let me make sure I've got my front. This is my front. So I'm going to get my pliers and I'm going to cut this wire on an angle. And I'm going to do the same thing over here. Oops, wrong direction. Was that the right direction? Yeah, that's fine. Then I'm going to cut an angle here. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to show you a cool tip. I'm going to file that point smooth. So I've got my 180 grit nail file. This is 180 to 100, 180. I'm going to use the 100 side first to create a nice point. taking the edges off where I cut it with my pliers. Okay, I'll be buffing on that anyway. So now I'm going to make a loop and then we're going to hammer it. So these might be a little long, but that's okay. We'll just make them bigger. So I'm going to get in my best working position since I'm going to be looping this into the side of the bracelet. So I'm going to loop it towards me. I'm going to leave a little bit of that tip out. Always try to get in a good working position for yourself. And they don't have to be exact. This is a very organic look. I'm going to cut this wire. Again, I'm using the number 2 just to create my shape. Okay, and we're going to be hammering those. So I'm in my best working position. And if you notice, I keep adjusting my bracelet so that I can work with myself, not against myself. Okay, so now we're going to hammer the dickens out of these. Flatten those down and we're going to work on the back side. I'm leaving this wire because I'm debating on putting a little bead in there. I don't know. I'm thinking about it. So I'm going to flare out the sides. Let me make sure I'm on my back side. Where's my front? Yeah, this is my, wait. This is my front because I bent my wires in there. You want to pay attention to that. So I'm going to flare out the sides. You want these really hardened because they're going to go against the wrist. This is a great hammer. I don't know what you call this. It's a really old hammer, but it's got the, I forgot what you call that part. It's thin and thick on one side, but it doesn't ding your wire a lot. I was using chasing hammers a lot, and that's fine if I really, really, really want to change something, but this works really great, and I can hammer out any nicks that I'm making. So as you can see, there's barely any nicks in that. So I'm going to do the same thing over here. So let's take a look at that. So I like that. Now you can see why we use 16 gauge, because it's pretty soft right now until we shape it. So this is a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 6.5-inch cuff, and it will get smaller as we shape it. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to get my buffer. You guys all know I'm a buffing freak, and I am going to buff out our swirls. I'm using a 180 grit, professional grade, construction grade buffing block. Now you could add a big bead there if you wanted, but I've decided I don't want to. I think I've got plenty of beads in this one. And I could still add one right there, a little one. I don't know. Let me think about this really quick. This one fit in there. That's a little big. That one would fit perfect. So if I come out of this weave a little bit and bring this bead in, we will embellish on it even more. And then we'll be done. I'll show you how I'm going to shape it. Which is my front? That's my back. I'm on my back. Let's see how that's fitting in there. Actually, I need to go back and leave that loop in there. And I think I'm going to roll these loops down. Yeah. So I'm going to get my pliers and just roll them in a little bit more using a flat nose, coming off the curve. I don't like them that far out. So that's cool. Let's bring this one in a little bit more. Better. So now we've shrunk our bracelet up. This one's down too much. So it's now, oh, it's still about, we brought it down under 6.5, which is good if somebody has that bead is not going to work. It's too big. See where it's riding up if I try to bring my wire in, and I could have it all the way out, but I'm not sure I have enough wire. Let's see. Nope. I don't think I'm going to have enough wire to get a bead in there. Let's try it one more time. If not, that's okay. No. I know I'm talking out loud, you guys. I just don't think I have enough wire to get the bead. In there. Meaning hoping I have enough wire to wrap around and tie it off. I still need to come up. I'm always going to give it a Girl Scouts try. I am running out. Whoa, I got little roly-polies here. I cannot find the hole. I think that may work. I think I might have just enough to do 3 wraps, and I really got to tighten down on that. Wow. Down to the very last piece of wire, huh? Okay. And we're almost done. I hope you enjoyed this, everyone. Please give me your feedback if you have any questions. Love to know your response. By the time I oxidize this and then put it in the tumbler, it will harden up really well. So I am using this little vitamin bottle. I found it to be the perfect size. I want to tell you what it measures so you can look for something too. And everybody use what you want. But for me, I got a ton of bottles down here. This measures almost 6.5 inches. Because this is my 1 inch mark right there. So it's just a little shy of 6.5 inches, and it just works out great. So I'm going to center this, and I'm going to start pushing down the sides and holding my bead. And it's great for making cuffs. And we've got not near the gap space in this because this is a bigger bracelet. And I kind of want to push my beads up. And it's natural to spin like that until it's on the wrist. If you didn't like that, you could always run wire through the back, meaning over these wires, and kind of do a zigzag back and forth to create like a back. But isn't that cool? So now we're going to keep reshaping this a little bit. I really want to push those through. Just pushing down on my wire. So see, this will definitely be adjustable. So now I'm going to just kind of like line things up and see how it's looking on my wrist. It's really cool, just different, huh, you guys? So you could take see, this is a little big for me. This is, I wouldn't want my cuff this close together, but do you see how I'm adjusting it? So isn't that pretty? That's just so pretty. I hope you enjoyed that, everybody. Please give me your feedback. I'm going to put the beads in the opposite direction. And if you are going to market, you always want to tell your clients to put their bracelet on from the bone side of the wrist. Never bring your bracelet down over the top of your wrist and open it way up. But there you go. This will fit a wrist size all the way up to a 7.5 or an 8. It would just spread it out more, and you can adjust that. Now, if you wanted, and I don't know, I just wanted to show you really quick. I do. I have my rubber mallet here. I'm going to harden this up even more. And you want to be careful, okay? So you just want to do this gently, and I'm just going to start tapping on this wire to harden it up. And I think you can hear that. And I'll buff out these swirls so that there's no edges on them. See the difference between this one that I buffed and this one that has like a sharper edge? Do you see that? And I'll really buff them out. But for the sake of the tutorial, they take so long. Just hardening up that wire. You could add, if you wanted, you could bring in crystals and add more stones all the way around. So that's already hardened it up quite a bit. So there you go, everyone. Thank you so much for being a part of this magical ancient art of wire. It predates the Phoenicians 5,000 years. I really encourage people to look up. See the difference in the bead size? So it's going to look great when it's oxidized. But I really encourage y'all to look up the history of the ancient art of wire. And other than that, I wish for all of you all that you wish for yourselves. May you have a wonderful, magical wire art day. Bye for now.